Good morning, everybody. We'll call the meeting to order. Council is conducting this meeting in person and via conference call in accordance with the Municipal Government Act, Section 199. Council chambers is open for public attendance in person. However, councillors and members of the public may still join meetings remotely using our current teleconference process. If you've submitted a comment request, the chair will call on you at the appropriate time. The chair may also ask for comments and concerns from the public relating to a particular topic, and at this time, phone lines will be unmuted. If you would like to speak, please state your name. We ask that only one member of the public speak at a time. All persons will be allotted 10 minutes to speak, as per our procedural bylaw. We ask that if the meeting recesses, that any callers hang up and call back in as the meeting reconvenes. This helps with call quality. Please note this call is being recorded and will be uploaded to our website and/or social media. To eliminate background noise, please mute your phone during the meeting. Everyone has a right to be present at council meetings and council committee meetings. Any attendees that are considered disruptive to the progression of this meeting may be removed at the discretion of the chair as per the MGA Section 198. We thank you for your cooperation and understanding. We have an agenda before us. Does anybody have any additions or changes?
Could I add, I guess under in-camera session, please, Strathmore Wheatland Chamber of Commerce, your FOIP Section 21.
You bet. Any other additions or changes?
Councillor Kester, please go ahead.
Just so you know, I have to leave at 4:30.
Okay. Thank you. Will you be coming back for the dinner with Rocky View County? Councillor Kester, will you be coming back for the dinner with Rocky View County?
I'll try.
Okay, perfect. Any other additions or changes? Deputy Reeve Clausen.
I have two Lakes of Muirfield RV site leased to the Homeowners Association. We'll put that under 2.1.1 if we could.
Okay.
And then I have Councillor Code of Conduct complaint under Section 6, or sorry, put it in camera, FOIP Section 17, I believe.
Any other changes or additions?
Reeve Link, Brian from administration. If possible, could we please also add ratify councillor attendance, Chara Seniors tour under 2.12.
You bet. Any other additions or changes? A motion to adopt or approve the agenda as amended.
Also move.
Councillor Bigger has moved. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We had the minutes circulated from our February 15th regular council meeting. Any errors or omissions? If not, a motion to approve the minutes.
Also move.
Councillor Kester has moved. Any questions? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 2.11, Muirfield RV storage site.
Bear with me for a sec here. So I've been talking with the Homeowners Association. I've gone to a few meetings, and as you know, we've looked at having that site to a waste transfer site as well, and the residents didn't want that. But got me thinking in the back of my mind at Speargrass, we looked at the similar situation with the RV site and we leased it to the Homeowners Association. I know it was used as revenue for the HOA, and we did a lease for, I think, quite a while. It was $1 lease for quite a while. And so anyways, I've talked to the HOA about it and they are very much in favor of having that done. I think it would lower our operational costs, being that we don't have to have staff looking after the site, like maintenance and whatnot. So that's what I'm looking at. I have a bunch of stuff written here, but I can answer any questions as well too.
Any questions for Deputy Reeve Clausen?
So what do you need to go forward with it?
Well, I put a motion forward. If you want, I can put a motion forward. We can have a discussion. So I'll put a motion forward that council direct administration to proceed with drafting a lease with the Lakes of Muirfield Homeowners Association for roll number 9455014, plan 1513169, block 9, lot 2, containing 3.01 acres, located within west, would that be south, west, or west? West 8th, 25, 26, west of the 4th for a 10-year period for the purpose of an RV storage site for the residents of Muirfield, commencing immediately to expire on December 31st, 2032 for $1.
Questions or discussion?
So I just want to, because they have to be fenced, that was one of their biggest expenses. And it was hard for because we have a community association where the homeowners maybe has a little extra money, but that was one of the bigger expenses.
The site is already fenced
Oh,
prior to us owning it, correct? I think it even has an electric gate on it.
That's correct.
oh, good.
Yes, and just for council's information, we've definitely been out there and kind of analyzed other potential uses for it, and just nothing really seems to fit. The waste transfer site didn't go well with the community, understandably so. It does back onto a couple properties. And then, so another point to note here is that we've definitely had some discussions on leases and how they must be advertised if they're below fair market value. However, there is a clause in the MGA, and I think it's under this section. So section 70 notes to go to section 241F. And then it kind of just lists the organizations that you wouldn't actually have to do the advertising under. So the HOA would fall under one of those.
So this would be strictly for the residents of Muirfield? Reason I'm asking is that it's quite difficult, it's quite onerous for somebody else to start an RV storage lot. And I just want a level playing field. So I have no problem if it's for the people, the residents of Muirfield, but if they're going to be bringing people in from all around, I don't think it's fair for other operations that have set up or gone through all the effort to set up an RV park or an RV storage site.
Through the Reeve, great question, Councillor Eichert, and that's part of one of the provisions in the lease that we'll put in, but it's also part of the discussions when, if this resolution shall pass from council, we'll sit down with the HOA and have that discussion, but most likely, and that's basically the sentiment that Deputy Reeve Clausen and I attending HOA meetings have heard as well. It's just going to be one of the provisions in the lease if we get there, and there's basic boilerplate provisions that we include in our leases as well.
Thank you.
And also talking through the HOA with the upcoming construction, because of the lot sales that we've had, they felt that this might give some builders a chance to have some storage as well during the building process, to try to have some offsite maybe, because it's going to be quite a bit happening there in the next little while. So, and then that's all monitored by them. And I know the way it currently operates, I believe we have a contract person that's looking after bookings and things like that. It's definitely not a revenue generator for the county, it's a loss. So I think this is the way to, it's a win-win, so.
Shannon?
So the
Councillor
homeowners that back onto this are in support of this? They
It-
didn't, they want. They
It
don't
is
mind.
already an RV site,
Yeah,
so operated by the county, so.
okay.
Any other questions or discussion?
So just, I think a question for Matt. If Scott was talking about storing construction stuff there during the construction phase, would that in any way violate the lease for RV storage and stuff?
Through the Reeve to Councillor Larson, that is also part of the discussions in the lease, right? So when staff meet with HOA representation, that's going to be a discussion. Obviously, boilerplate provisions talk about damages and the rest. No changes shall occur without county permission and all of that. So if we lock them in something that contains provisions to allow for construction equipment, then we'll have to obviously expand on that. But otherwise, that's just part of the discussion in the lease.
Okay, thank you.
I could clarify that a bit too. So it wouldn't be like materials, I would say more like a trailer. Like someone have a trailer for their tools or something they're leaving for the weekend. Instead of leaving it on the road, they could put it in there.
Right, yeah, and I wasn't so much worried about what, just as long as we don't violate the lease, then that's fine.
For sure.
Any other questions? All in favor? Motion is carried.
Thank you.
We'll move to 2.12, ratify attendance at Cara Seniors Community. And for the date, I think we just need a motion.
I can't find the piece of paper.
Oh, right.
There we go.
February 11th.
I'll move that council ratify the attendance of the Wheatland County councillors for the Chara Seniors Tour that was held on February 11th.
Any questions or discussion?
Just a question. I had to work that day, and I'd love to be able to tour that site. Would it provide provision for me to go there at another date and look? Council would consider that.
It'd be good to see.
I'd really like to see it. There was no way I could get out of work that day, so.
Yeah,
Do you need a separate motion for that?
I think you could just amend the motion to include and an alternate date for councillors who were unable to attend. Is that, Cio Henderson, does that work?
Yes, that would.
Yeah, I'll accept that amendment.
Any other questions or discussion? Yes.
Went to it, it was very nice. She's made numerous presentations in council. But to me, it's a development. She's just starting it. Don't go out and a few other developments unless we're invited for sure. I'm just wondering if this is going to set a precedent where we're going to be going out and inspecting developments. Don't get me wrong here, it was very nice of Marcy to invite us out and we all got to have a look at it, and that was all very good. But I was willing, unexpected, just to go out on my dime, but for council to go out, is it going to set a precedent when we get a development over there that, we're so happy about? Or say the windmills, people went out there to look and no, that didn't qualify. How are we going to decide? And we'll go down further down the thing. Someday there's going to be a ribbon cutting, and you're going to get paid to go to a ribbon cutting at the same place. So I'm just wondering if this is just going to set a precedent, and when you look at it as purely a development thing, don't want to belittle it in any way. It is something that is much needed in the county, but I'm just wondering, is this really in our scope of business?
Any other questions or discussion?
I'm just wondering, when we go to these other tours, like we went to the Rocky Mountain one there, we went to the ASB, went to, maybe we actually went as councillors, to the How to Write Colony. Did we ratify those? I don't remember. But
I don't remember either.
all I know is that I was invited and I asked that if all council could come, so that's why the invitation came from me. So I don't know. Me and her, I guess.
Councillor Larson.
And I think we do need to decide this, because if in the future, if we're not going to ratify these things, I won't come, because that's like 240 kilometers of mileage that I have to eat to go
Exactly,
there.
yeah.
So I'm not interested in doing that. I mean, I don't mind donating my time, but I'm not donating my gas and mileage and stuff. Thanks.
Personally, I'm comfortable on a case-by-case basis. We have to be mindful in terms of bias and things like that with developments. We always have to watch for that, like if we're attending, but that was very much just a demonstration of sort of what the show home would look like. I do see that as a little bit distinct as well, just because of the population they're serving and the foundation and that type of thing. I'm comfortable if we just address them on a case-by-case basis. We can try and do them in advance so that you'll be aware if you will be compensated or not. At times they do come up and it's sort of time sensitive or that type of thing, and we have to do them retroactively, but we can definitely make efforts to do them in advance. Councillor Larson?
Yeah, and I would just, I would agree with what you're saying there. In this particular case anyway, and it provides the case for a case-by-case basis, pun intended, that there is a benefit to the residents of the county in this particular one. So I think we can look at that says, you know, we can justify this because there's a benefit, or at least a potential benefit to the residents of the county.
Councillor
Just
Aitken?
because something is ratified, I do not have to put this on my timesheet. That's correct, right? I mean, because it's not that far out of my. So yeah, no, I've got no problems with it. I have not decided whether or not I will bill for my time there because I was heading to someplace else at the time anyhow. So yeah, no, I've got no problems with like if a natural, like if I've got to go 120 kilometers to something, I am probably going to asked to be paid for it, but like if I've got to go 30 kilometers both ways, it's not quite the same thing.
And that's a good point. When I went to the windmill thing, I was the closest one, so I didn't really care.
Deputy Reeve Clausen?
Yeah, and we all know costs are getting higher and higher, and I respect Rick's what he's saying because it is very expensive to go somewhere to do these things and take time out of your day. I look at it as if it a little differently maybe than most. If it something that would benefit me personally, then I don't charge. Like if it's something that I'm going to with my county hat on, and I'm looking at it as from the county eyes, then I think it's has to come back either for ratification or go through our normal process. So.
Any other questions or discussion? Good discussion. Definitely something that we can be just mindful of when we're addressing them for sure. I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 3.1. My report is included in the package. I did attend some webinars that were put on by RMA. There were some good background information just for ways that RMA does advocacy. I actually even learned something new in the resolution session, which we actually heard that from a few returning councillors that attended as well. Several meetings with potential developers and both provincial and federal representatives and elected officials, working on advancing a couple of potential developments that are considering applying in Wheatland County. Been appreciative for the time that the Western Irrigation District has taken to meet with us as well. I think those have been good meetings and good conversation and strategic planning for how we can collaborate in the future. I'm open to any questions, and I will move that my report be accepted as presented. Any questions? All in favor? Motion is carried. Under 3.11, you will find an addendum. This is a brochure that was developed by the Community Futures Wild Rose staff. Some shareholders in the Community Futures have included this in their utility billing, whether that's digitally or paper. There would be some cost if we were to consider doing that for the county, as Community Futures has provided the digital brochure, but not paper copies. So I did just want to raise to council whether this would be something we would want to consider sending out with the next utility billing. Basically, it walks through the programs that Community Futures offers, support for entrepreneurs and small business. I think it was Troshu who came up with the idea to develop the brochure, and they got really good feedback when they included it in their utility billing. They just found it was a good way to hit a lot of their residents. Another option that we would have might be to consider including it in the county connector instead, because that would go more broadly maybe less cost as well if it could be integrated into the publication if there's room.
I like the idea of the county connector, to be honest.
We may be able to format it a bit differently too, just so that it works like better for that, the formatting of that. I'm sure we do have some constraints from Community Futures just in how we develop and brand things, but I'm sure that we could make it compliant and just so it works with the format, so.
I agree. I think the County Connector is a great vehicle for sending this out, to be honest. Yeah.
Councillor Kester?
Do we have a link on our website for Community Futures?
We do under WC Infinite website. There's a link to multiple business supports, including Community Futures. I don't know if there would be an appropriate place on the county, like the main county one. I don't know if administration
We have a
can.
lot of links on our website, and sometimes it's hard to find what you're looking for.
Yeah.
I don't know if it can be categorized differently, or we do a lot, and I'm just hard to find. I'll just leave it go with that.
Yes, Reeve, we could make a push on our social media page and include it on our WC Infinite website as well, if you'd like to leave that in the hands of administration.
Yeah, and if council's comfortable, Community Futures does do a lot of social media posts as well that if council's, if there's consensus from council that we could share on the county website as well. As a shareholder, obviously, we serve all the residents in this region, and we have had some increased uptake in Wheatland through some of the programs at Community Futures, and it's definitely well needed right now in particular. So they've really done some dynamic programming as well, like different ways of approaching things, helping people pivot and have digital online presence and sort of well-being focus and that type of thing as well. So I'll put a motion on the floor for council to direct administration to reformat the Community Futures brochure to include in the next County Connector and to amplify Community Future social media messaging via our social media. Open the floor to any questions or discussion.
I'll support that motion. I've used Community Futures before for business prior to me ever becoming councillor, and I wasn't aware of it before, and just kind of come across it when I had a business in Strathmore, and actually they were fantastic to work with. Very quick to get the money you needed and to expand your business. So, great group.
Thanks for sharing that. We do hear that consistently from individuals that utilize either the financing services or the business support services and the coaching. And we've heard some really powerful stories of how it's impacted both individuals and families, but also communities, because if we can sort of contribute to the sustainability of small businesses in our communities, we know that that contributes to the sustainability of our communities as well. So it is really important work that they do, and we have a phenomenal team at Community Futures. So any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 3.2, Deputy Reeves' report.
Thank you. My report was handed out as I submitted it late. So there's a piece of paper on your desk. The one I want to point out, February 7th, we had our Wheatland Regional Partnership evening meeting. I just wanted to just question the value of this sometimes. I have no problem talking to other councils or anything like that, but when you look at the number, the dollar value of the staff involved, per diems for all the councillors, and sometimes we've traveled before, we've gone to, out into Hazard and stuff, you get into the thousands of dollars. And sometimes the information a lot of times the information that's there, I believe could be shared in a different manner, more efficient. And then if there's discussions made that need to come forward, I think maybe just trying to think in value-wise, maybe the leaders of the individual communities, maybe the Reeves and the mayors can meet, and if there's something that needs to come back and we need to have a meeting together, we could establish one, but they become almost very mundane and very repetitive. So I'm just trying to question the value of that. So I'll leave that just to think, and then I'll go through the rest of my report. February 11th, Cio executive meeting, which I'm a member of the executive. I fill Ben's position. We're just reviewing everything, the grant funding is, and before going forward, and then the 3 submissions, private funding, are very aware of what's going on, so they have no problems with the timeline that's going on, so they understand that we have to wait for funding. And then down for the normal board meeting, I was actually put in charge of the subcommittee to review the transportation data, because we're going through the waste stream data, the transportation data, because it's a few years old now, just to make sure it's current enough for when to see if we got recommendations to update that data or anything like that. So going back to the WRP, I don't know if I need to put a motion on the floor or if we can have some discussion about that as council. I don't know the best way to go forward.
Being new here, this is a monthly. How often do they meet?
Quarterly.
Quarterly, okay.
Yeah.
And so normally it's all of council on all.
So Wheatland historically has sent all of council. I did notice that historically, for example, the town of Strathmore, there would just be like representative councillors. It may have been a scheduling conflict, or it may have been purposeful, I'm not sure. Sometimes there'd be 3 representatives from the town. I think the villages typically would have all of their councillors in attendance, if I recall correctly.
And it rotates through each municipality. Someone hosts it all the time. So when we met in person, you'd have like 30 people really. Could have up to, and then more concerning is the staff time to me. I mean, that's overtime for a lot of people. So is there value there? Is there something that we can take back? How can we do it? I think we can do the same thing more efficiently. That's where I'm looking.
For me, I don't mind meeting some of the other councillors and getting to know them a little better. I mean, not having been here for very long, I don't know if there's other opportunities that come up to do that, or if this is kind of the one opportunity. I don't know. But
Yeah, and sadly, I think online has taken that away.
yeah, you're right. You don't get to know people that way. Yeah.
This would be, I think, the primary way that we typically would interact with the town and the village. Typically, there are exceptions. Of course, some of our boards that we sit on are collaborations with the villages or the villages and the town. But it is a good opportunity for that. One option is that we could just sort of have self-declared, like you could look at the agenda, determine if you feel that it's pertinent or of value to attend, and perhaps just via email or that type of thing, we could ensure that we always have representation there, but that if somebody does deem that perhaps it's not, in their opinion, of value, like for all of council to attend, then you could sort of voluntarily not attend, and then the individuals who do attend would have a responsibility to report back to all of council. I do agree, I'm not sure that it's necessary for administration to attend every meeting. I think, again, we could review the agenda, and if there's something that we would want administrative support or expertise or insight, then we could specify, this is coming up from an emergency management perspective, or this, something like that, where it might be really useful to have an administrative representative there. But I see what you're saying, because we want to maintain that work-life balance, and with a lot of evening meetings, that can definitely jeopardize that. So,
A little bit of context. There's boards I sit on, and they're talking, WRC was talking about having too many board members and the value that goes out and how much it costs. And I'm thinking, well, where else are we doing this? Like, how many other places are we spending more people than we need to, right? So just kind of looking at it overall, I'm not diminishing the fact that I love to share the information with the other municipalities. They do have their sports days and their whatever days they have, and they invite us out for that kind of thing, and I have no problems with that. It's just, what are we, or is it productive? No. And could it be a different way? Could it be letters, asking for support in XYZ, and we say yes, no, we deal with lots of other municipalities that way too, so that's all.
I think it's a great question. Another good opportunity to, and I agree with you, I think we do need to be constantly evaluating sort of the value. Sorry, Councillor Custer, I'll get right to you, my apologies. The value of where we're spending money, and I do think that's critical. I think it would be good at our next organizational meeting to, especially now that the, almost can't call you newly elected anymore, but the relatively newly elected councillors will have had that full year. We can just review all of our committees and boards at that time and determine if there are ones where we may need less representation or more representation. That would be a good opportunity there. Personally, I do fully support continuing the Wheatland Regional Partnership. I like the quarterly basis. I think it's good to, for relationship building, but also just because we do value those partnerships, and it's important to have that mechanism where we have that sort of regular opportunity to address either issues or opportunities, ways we can work together. Councillor Kester.
Yeah, I agree. The last couple meetings there hasn't been much of an agenda, but in the past we've had some pretty robust agendas. And I'm thinking, just for me, on the Wademza thing, when we had, I forget their names now, there was about 4 of them come out and talk about the ambulance, and we talked at length, and we got some promises. Some were maybe misunderstood, but we didn't see them fulfilled as we thought they would be fulfilled. But at any rate, there is another, I think, another platform that we were thinking for the next partnership meeting. There's 10 points to that they're addressing healthcare in the province, and we've already seen some benefits at Wademza now. I see it as a great opportunity to tell all the councils, for all participate in a discussion about some relative things as Wademza presents itself at times. And even housing, we've had presentations there for housing that's all the councillors hear the same thing all the time. So I'd hate for it to see it to go away. I'd hate to see it be limited, but maybe we could have a conversation at the next partnership meeting and say, if we only got one thing on the agenda that's not that relevant, maybe it just gets onto the next meeting, or even have a discussion there. Maybe the other partners will take it as an opportunity to add fresh stuff. I don't know, but I think everybody should be aware of our concerns.
Yep, good points.
Thank you for indulging me in that discussion. That's all I wanted, was to just highlight it and get some different thoughts, and going back to the next meeting and putting it on there and saying, can we do this as efficiently as possible and still have the same outcome? I'm fine with that. So with that, I will move my report as presented.
Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. And yeah, I'm glad you raised it. I think it's important to discuss, and I liked Councillor Custer's idea of we could defer as well if there is limited agenda items and if they're not time sensitive. So that's a great idea. We'll move to 3.3. Councillor Laprise.
Okay, my report is online. I guess a couple of things I'd like to highlight. Strathmore Wheatland Chamber of Commerce, they're starting discussions about a trade show in May. It's meant to be agriculture, commercial and light industrial, and energy sectors, kind of a trade show for the region. They're wanting to showcase the region's immersive tourism, hospitality and food experiences. It's scheduled for May 28th and 29th at the Strathmore Motor Products Sports Centre. So it's going to be a regular kind of a trade show with booths. I think it could be a great opportunity for some businesses in Wheatland County. They also want to provide local experiences for the day. So they're talking about, somehow it's not worked out yet, but like tours to A Farms or Origin Brewing or Rosebud or different kind of experiences like that. They want to encourage people from Calgary and surrounding areas to come and see what Wheatland County is all about. So that's a great thing, I think. They also want to have a kind of a taste of the country and have taste the flavors of our local farmers and growers. They might also have a separate kind of a farmers market. It wouldn't be really part of it, but as a side show kind of thing. They want to do some entertainment and various other components of it. So I'm kind of excited about it. I think it's a great idea. So I hope the timing is okay. At first I raised the issue that May is prime farming time. But end of May is better than early May. So I guess that was as good as it could be for getting in this trade show in this year. So anyways, I'm excited about that. I also went on 2 different Zoom calls with Minister Ahir regarding the police issue. So we talked one-on-one about just, what the new proposed police service, how it would improve what we currently have. And we have so many unanswered questions, her and I both. She did call in our CMP from Strathmore and Chestermere to the February 4th meeting. And so they answered some, but I don't think they were in a position to really talk about governance kinds of issues and that kind of thing. They have some insight, but they're not the right position for that. So anyways, it was informative, but it's still kind of an ongoing thing. I'm expecting to attend the online virtual sessions this month, so we'll see what happens there. I think that's kind of all that's pertinent this month. So I'll move my report if there's any questions.
Any questions for Councillor Laprise? I do want to thank you for doing those calls with MLA here. We had some scheduling challenges around those times,
Yes.
I think your insight and having you there is really helpful for council, so thank you. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 3.4. Councillor Baker.
Yes. So I didn't have anything. I did the report before I had a meeting with Wademza Met, and I just want to highlight that they did change that shifting. They added a new shift. So one of the statistics that came out of that was they had started the shift, and I didn't write down actually if it was per week or per 2 weeks, but it has helped immensely. For 85 calls to Calgary were in that week or in that timeline before this shifting changed, and there was 10 after. So it has definitely helped. And that was one of the biggest things that I had put down here. So calls keep increasing for Wademza too. So, and it was a 21% increase from last year. The other ones, the Canadian Badlands, I met with Travel Alberta. It's coming to a close. We moved the website and the domain over to Travel Alberta. And WFCSS is pretty much business as usual. They are having a women's conference April 9th that they are promoting right now. They also have some, which is a really good, they have a magnet. Oh, it's not very big. And it has all your emergency numbers plus the numbers for the counties of all the villages, County Wheatlands, County Strathmore. So all your elected officials plus emergency numbers. So they're passing that out too. And yeah, if there's any question, if there isn't any questions, I'll put my report forward.
Any questions for Councillor Bigger? All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll move to 3.5. Councillor Eichert.
Excuse me. My report is on the server. I think everything's been sort of covered by everybody else. The only thing that I want to add to my report is after the last meeting of Wheatland Housing Management, after the meeting, I received an unsigned letter from the board. And upon reflection, I have decided that it is no longer tenable for me to be at that table, and I ask for permission from council to step away.
Okay. In terms of process, question to administration. We have an alternate. I think Councillor Larson, you're the alternate. It would be, so you would prefer not to sit as alternate, I'm assuming, as well?
Yes.
Okay. So it might be prudent for council to appoint, change the appointments to the housing board through resolution, because I believe we're legislated to appoint.
Yes. So it would be wise to just, in this situation, we should probably either determine what council wants to do with the Division 4 report first, and then maybe address these issues after.
Okay.
Okay, I'll move my report.
Okay. Any questions or discussion regarding the balance of Councillor Eichert's report? All in favor? Oh, do you have a question?
Well, we can still discuss this.
Yes, we're going to address it right after. We'll just approve the report first, or accept the report as presented first, and then we can address the resignation from the housing board. Any other questions about the balance of the report, excluding the housing board? All in favor? Motion is carried.
So if I were in council's shoes, I would accept Councillor Eichert's resignation by council resolution, and then I would appoint a new board member and a new alternate. And I would follow the same procedure as the organizational meeting. If there's more than one nominee, which that depends, then kind of follow that process. And if not, see if we can get an alternate at the board as well.
Okay. So first I'm looking for motion to accept Councillor Eichert's resignation from the Wheatland Housing Management Body.
Also moved.
Councillor Larson has moved. Questions or discussion?
Just curious, there was a letter mentioned. It concerns a councillor on a board, I think. I don't know. Is it information we can see?
It was all in camera. I have no idea how to handle it, so.
If this is COVID related, is it
Like I
unnecessary now, like March 1st?
Councillor
The whole
Kester?
contents of the letter, everything is in camera. It's just only one that knows is Tom, and the one who wrote the letter is the CAO and myself. Nobody else knows the contents of that letter. That way. And I don't even believe there's a copy of it.
Just a suggestion too, if council chooses, they could also go and take in camera and discuss the item as well.
I'd prefer that.
And would council be open to adding that to our closed session at the end of our meeting? Would you be comfortable? Well, I guess we could accept the resignation at this point. We do have a motion on the floor from Councillor Laursen, but we could further discuss this and then discuss the appointment of representatives in our closed session. I'm just thinking it can be cumbersome to move into closed session, change the phone back into open session. I'm seeing consensus from council that we're comfortable. So we'll deal with the motion on the floor regarding the resignation, and then perhaps we will put a motion to defer continued conversation in closed session. Any other questions regarding the motion to accept the resignation or discussion?
I have a hard time voting on this one because I have extremely little information to make any decision. And I always try to say, if I'm going to make a decision, I need to have some information, and I have zero, other than a councillor that wants to resign and a letter that I don't know about. I can't support it. I'm sorry. I have no information to go on a decision.
Councillor Larson and then Councillor Eichert.
I would look at this similar to when we were in the Cio thing. It was fairly apparent to me that I might not be a good fit for that board. I think if Councillor Eichert wants to tender his resignation, we need to accept that and honor his wishes. That would just be my position.
You know, I have even more questions.
Did you have your hand up, Councillor Eichert?
Yeah, just Councillor Clausen, I believe there's no way that I can be of any benefit, and I can serve any benefit for the county for sitting to be on that board. So I see no way forward.
Any other questions or discussion? I'll just add that we, I don't know how we worded it, but perhaps just to accept the resignation with regret, if you're open to that. All in favor? Motion is carried.
Can I just add one more thing?
Of course.
I would also like to thank Councillor Eichert for his service on that board thus far, and wish him well, whatever board you get on next, I guess. I don't know how else to say that. But thanks, Tom, for what you've already done.
Thank you, Rick.
Yeah, and I would echo Councillor Larson's comments. I think you were a tremendous value. Your background in construction and building, I think, was invaluable. With such a significant capital property that board is responsible for maintaining and governing. So, and definitely want to thank you for looking out for the residents and the seniors in our community. So it was valuable and appreciated.
And I'll also like to add, as chair of the board, that thanks, Tom, for your contributions and your forthrightness.
So I will move that we add an agenda item under agenda item 6, closed session in camera, WHMB. The FOIP would probably be, I should have it flagged, 26?
Intergovernmental, I'll just take a look at that section.
We can note it when we go in as well. Oh, I do have it flagged.
Uh, 21.
Perfect. Thank you. Any questions or discussion?
So just a quick question: if the reason to move into closed camera for electing a new board member is, I mean, if we've already accepted Councillor Eichert's resignation, I'm just questioning the need for the in-camera session now. I'm open to whatever the reason is. I'm not sure I quite understand it yet.
just through the Reeve. So I believe the in-camera item would pertain to discussing the letter that was issued to Councillor Eichert. The board election would be an open session.
I would say that discussion's up to Councillor Eichert. I would not presume to ask him to discuss anything that he's not comfortable with.
It gets, like, I'm willing to have this conversation out in public, but it probably is better that my concerns are aired in camera.
Okay, so, but just so we're clear, then you'd like to air some concerns.
Well, I have reservations.
Okay, good enough.
I actually was the one that was asking some questions and I get no answers, so I trying to figure out what's going on here. There's a myriad of questions that I would prefer to ask in camera of members that sit on that board, I guess. And whether or not it's in camera, I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. So
There may also, it would definitely fall under FOIP Section 21. There could also be an element of FOIP Section 24, because we may be looking for advice from officials as well, just to handle the closed session nature of the letter and just the questions that have been raised around that. So we will limit the discussion in closed session just to a discussion that needs to be in closed session, and then obviously any discussion that is possible to have in an open session, we will absolutely have an open session, including the appointment of the board member and the alternate. Any other questions or discussion?
are we moving into appointing somebody right away, or would we do it at the end of the meeting? I just prefer to give it, this is all new, just give it some thought as with what we're doing. Don't want to be rushing.
If council's comfortable, we could do it following the closed session. We could have motions arising after we have a discussion there.
Fair enough. Thanks.
So I have a motion on the floor to include this under section 6 of the agenda. I'll just amend the motion to include the appointment of the board members to follow that closed session. So there will be motions arising, just for clarity. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor Eichert. We will move to 3.6. Councillor Kester.
My report's on the server. Just like to reiterate on the 18th, we had a Zoom meeting, the building committee, with Linda Cuppins was the operations manager and finance for Capitol Building in the Ministry of Seniors. She moved on, and I'm not 100% sure where she moved on to, but she's still working for the government. There was this little shuffle there. So Dean Lusher was her assistant. He's taken over for her in the meantime. And Robert Craig's been there for since we started this project. So those were the two principals on our meeting we had on with him. And our concerns were moving ahead with a performance and how we secured contractor to got a hold of the contractor under the recommendation of Linda Cuppins. We wanted to make sure that was still valid. And anyway, we had this meeting with them, and they said they were extremely happy with the work we're doing. They have no concerns what we're doing, and they definitely have no concerns with hiring Derek Weiss. He's good. Value contract was $38,000. It's below the $50,000. They didn't have any concerns. We can just hire him. They like his work up there. And so yeah, that was the end of the meeting. After the meeting, we decided that we would hire Derek. He can't start for a couple months. He's busy doing other things. Might have the first phase done maybe the end of June, but it's an 8 to 10 month project. And it's the financing side of the lodge and what we can afford to build. That's what he's going to be working on. So part of that too was we needed to have a condition, a price put on our existing lodge. So we hired Altris. I had a couple contacts from Derek as well as this Altris group. They attend a lot of the ASHA conferences and stuff. And he was highly recommended by Derek. They worked together, so we've hired Altris, Sean Jones to come and do an evaluation of the lodge. That should be done by summertime, I'm thinking. And then we'll know that value has to get into what Derek's doing. So these are pieces of work that have to be done to secure grant funding. Grant funding has changed again from what it used to be. This is the third time. The provincial or the federal government has money they want to put in for seniors, and they like to channel it through CMHC. And during our meeting, they said they're going to try and streamline the process, applying federally and provincially. There's always seems to be a bottleneck there. So they're going to try and get that done. There are grants through CMHC as you go through the process to help pay for it. See if we qualify, see if they stay in. To me, that's why we hired Derek. So that part's done and moving forward. We did talk about trying to inform our residents on the process and where we are. And Derek says it's a little premature. When he had something more in his experience, he would wait on that. Derek's experience, he's a sole contractor. He did work for Colliers at one time. Colliers is the big company that is experienced in building lodges and similar structures. So the board took him on his word, and we are just going to stay the way it is until we get some more to report. So we took his advice, and that's so much for the lodge. Is there any questions on that?
What does Derek Weiss do now?
He does a performa. So he goes through and he'll do how much it's going to cost us to run the new lodge, how much money we need to build a new lodge, where are we going to get the money from. He knows where the grants are. He will talk to individual councils. I was hoping maybe we could do it at regional partnership, but we'll wait and see what Derek says. Maybe it's more advantageous to talk to a council. I don't know. We haven't crossed that bridge yet. But he'll put together a final thing that we can take to the government, and this is our performa. It's what we expect for money. This is how we're going to pay for it. Rates we're going to have to charge the clients. I don't know how far you want me to get in, but the new government, they want a different model for rates that we charge. We have residents there that live off of old age security and guaranteed income supplement. That's not much money. And they pay hardly anything, but we have LAP grants that cover the difference. Then we have other seniors there that pay the full shot. And maybe when we review it, maybe that has to be increased. Maybe it has to be increased for everybody. But they want to change. It doesn't have to be market value because we are a lodge. But maybe I think they call it within 80%. They have a name for it. escaped me at the time. I'm not that familiar with it. I'm just waiting for the report, and then it should explain itself. Derek's in touch with the government and their wishes, and he knows the hurdles of what CMHC got. Some projects on the ground right now, and they're getting built, and they've been approved, and he's working on one right now that, of course, he would like to get approved. And he's was very happy, he'll come work for us. We've had a pre-meeting with him. I think he scared everybody pretty good. And it's a reality check. And now we got our dreaming phases done. Now we have to try and pay for it. And it'll be quite thorough for sure. I have every bit of faith in him. Go ahead.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, I just, based on listening in on the recording with Derek, it sounds to me like he's looking at it from the other side of things, looking at who is the market that we're trying to house, and then looking at what they can afford and building a lodge from that perspective. And so I think he's looking at more of the realistic, the lodge that we have kind of designed might be overbuilt for the population that we're considering. And so that's what I heard. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's kind of more of a reality check on just making sure that what we build is for the population and what they can afford in our area.
You're absolutely right. We had a needs assessment done by Gary Gordon. And at the time, it was just numbers of people, how many people there are. And when he was saying all them words, I thought, oh my God, here comes another study, because we have to study how much money these people have now, right? And I asked him that question when I was on the phone telling him that we would like him to work for us. And he says those numbers are readily available, and he's quite experienced in extracting them from wherever he finds them. So he's got the numbers, he's got the census part done, he'll check on that. But he can also put numbers on that to see how it works in his forma, however he fills it out. But yeah, that was a major thing for sure. Do we need this many beds? Do we need to charge more? He asked all the questions. Of course, we don't have any concrete answers to the way he thinks,
I think he was even saying, do we need this size of each, just in terms of what we've designed, maybe we need to scale it back a little bit for the people who can't afford what we've designed. I think it's just a real good look at making sure that what we're doing is very realistic and it's what our population can afford. It's not a Calgary-built, exclusive and expensive seniors lodge. It has to be, reasonable for who we're trying to accommodate here. That's all.
Councillor Larson?
And I had been visiting a friend of mine the day of that meeting that's a resident of the lodge, so I had attended as the alternate, and Councillor Eichert had sent me some time ago the drawings of what they had designed, and I kind of thought that was a little bit of putting the cart before the horse thing. So what I see with this stuff, just as I saw at that meeting, is some of the concerns that I think I've heard before too, that this needs to be built fit for purpose. That's a lovely design that they have, but that's probably not realistic for what the needs are for the community. So I think that's where this study will really come in well to say that this is because I said to them, there's no point building a whole bunch of high-end residents if you build 100 of those and you only have 50 people that can afford them, well, then that's not a good use of time. So I think this is a good reality check for that board.
And also, our dream was 65 extended care units. We haven't heard anything from AHS yet. We've got a different contact, but if we don't get a contract from AHS, those 65 beds have to come off. And it'd be just the lodge beds, so we'll be left with 100, 110. Lodge is what we currently have now, is 100 beds. So that 65 beds would drop off. But there's room there to expand. We could add on another tower at some time if we do get those 65 beds. They are 2 years ago, the province said Strathmore and area were 31st on the list, not 31st, one of 31 communities in Alberta that were in priority need of extended care. And Strathmore's number come out at 110, plus 6 hospice beds. That was, but we haven't heard anything from the government. We put in our thing, application. I believe it was in August, so in August it'll be 2 years, and we haven't heard anything. So the chances are very high those 65 beds will have to drop off, and will have to be an addition after the fact. But we'll be looking at maybe 100, 110 lodge beds. We'll see what Derek's son goes. Donna?
Yeah, so my question would be, I guess I don't really know exactly how it works, but do you have reserves and money through the board to go, like, sounds like it's going to be more studies, now you have someone else you've hired, is there money there for all that? Or none of this goes on to the ratepayers, right? None of these costs?
We have reserves. We've got enough reserves to finish the planning. Been marked for building a new building, so this is part of the planning
So that
process. So there are
Derek,
reserves.
everything goes on him?
It's not going on
Okay.
this year's expenses of the lodge. It's coming from reserves.
Deputy Reeve Clausen.
My question is process. Sounds like this guy's a contracted consultant. Does the board have a policy on hiring somebody? The reason I'm asking this is there's been previous people that do the same role. I think one ended up being the CAO of Strathmore at the same time. There's been money spent. I'm just wondering, you have a policy where you vet these people and make sure you're getting what you're getting, or does someone just come and say, I can do this? I just don't understand. There's got to be 3 or 4 different people that can do the same job. Are you weighing them against each other? Are you trying to get the best, or I don't know how that works.
Before we hire anybody at the lodge, in my past experience, we ask 2 people for references. We ask Asha if they've had any experience with this individual, and we will ask we have contacts to the housing ministry, and we'll start with our regional one, Shamid, and we'll work our way up to the ministry to Robert Craig, and he's ADM for ministers of seniors, and we ask them if they're appropriate, or is this appropriate work. This individual that we hired, I asked Linda Cuppins, one in charge of capital for senior housing. I asked her who she would recommend. She said Derek Weiss. And I says, is there anyone else that we should be looking at? I thought of somebody else, and she just looked at me in the eye and she said, I said Derek Weiss. That's who she wanted. So that's who we went with.
So for clarification, there is no policy at the board for hiring consultation or contractors to do this kind of work. It's just asking.
This is the first time we've done any of this. We don't have a policy, no. Usually we have policies when we do repetitive work. This is a one-off.
But they're contractor. What?
We have a contractor come in and fix our water tank. We've got 2 or 3 prices. If it's an emergency, we have a list of people in priority we will call. If it is somebody that we will have time to contract, we go out and we find contracts. I believe yearly, or we go through our list of preferred contractors and we give them all a call, and we make sure they are current, and they're, because we live in a housing business where we can have a water leak, a boiler blow, hot water tank go, the building's getting older, we do have policies for that. And they are adhered to. But this is a one-off, this is something bigger, trying to build a new lodge. Reached out to the Minister of Housing, David Williams, ADM, and this is the meeting we had, and this is who they recommended. These are the people that are going to look at the work and approve it or not approve it. But why not hire the people that they want?
So Glenn, this being such a big project, there was so much, because you guys had to do the study, and this is what, there was so much engagement with the community. You know, of course, then you get the questions, right? What are they doing? What's happening with the, you know, when is this happening? Are the minutes actually for your board, are they public? Is there something that, even just the minutes being shared with the public?
We don't put them on a website.
You don't
or
put them on.
anything, no. But they are public. People can come in and look at them. Not like much to do with the
Yeah.
building.
I'm just thinking even the questions around this board, it would be, I know the public is actually asking quite a bit of questions. If there's something that could be arranged where more information could be, so we could just, the board could be a little bit more transparent on where it's going, what's happening, where you're at now. I don't know.
To be honest with you, we haven't moved any since we got that report with the public and we shared with them. We've asked the ministers and we've trying to find contractors. What's our next steps? And we're on the next steps now. We're just starting. I don't believe there's any public participation in these steps to get the performa done. Once the performa is done, yes, we'll have lots to talk about and lots to share. But there is nothing outside of the fact that we've hired somebody to do it. I can't even, I'm not a performa type person, and I don't know what the provincial government wants all in their process. All we were told is that he does what they want. He's doing good work for the province. And
Well, it sounds like
their
he's
template
realistic.
is his template.
But,
It's so much so, we had to sign a paper that his work is priority. We can't share the way he does his numbers. We can give the numbers, but the way he does it is his property. We can't share his methodology, right? All I know is somebody upstairs likes his work, and that's what I'm going by. And
I
the
do know
rest of
that
the
he's
board.
mentioning some of the stuff that was
Yeah.
mentioned on the board when I was on the board. Like, well, even Tom brought up quite a bit of stuff about, yeah, you need to know the price and you need to know what's out there. The report was done 2 years ago, the engagement, and that study, like, has things changed? And I know I have brought that up. Tom brought that up too. Yeah. Well, sounds like he's a little bit more realistic.
I guess in an ideal world, we could have run the two processes concurrently.
Simultaneously, yeah.
But that was a previous government. So that government wanted to give us 80% and own the building if we qualified for the grant. That government asked us to get a shovel-ready project ready. We did. Now it's sitting there. So now we have a different government, and over the last 3 years, they are perfecting the way they're going to interact with the public. So we have a different model to follow now. So this is the third government since we've started this. Each one of them have been different. So I'm not blaming anybody. This process is a good process, but that's okay, but it is a different process. We were asked at one time to have a shovel-ready project, but then the downturn come, then COVID come, and and everything's changed. So we have to change with it. And I'm not happy about it, no, just strings it out, but that's what we have.
Deputy Reeve Clausen.
So the reason I brought up the concerns is public money, and I understand there's been governments changing and stuff, but if the plan is solid and is done well, it should flow through any government that's coming. The problem I see is we get a new government comes and we got this preferred guy and we got to spend some more money, and then this previous government, and that's where I have the problem is it's, I hate to say it, it's like it's somebody scratching somebody's back, not here, but the provincial wise, and that just, my next, the hairs in the back of my neck stand up like, this guy is your guy, so you got to pay for him. When I hear that, I'm like, no, we have a policy to follow. We should vet this against ABC. We should do that here. If someone comes in here and says, I can do this, we always do, no, we need to look at it and make sure it's right. And then the plan is the plan. And if it's solid enough plan, it should be fine. So that's where I'm coming from. And I mean, no offense. It's just, it's public money. We have to be careful with it because it drains fast. So.
I understand your concerns, and we did talk about it at the board, and the board said, yes, well, that's the direction we'll go.
So, and following up with Donna, maybe we could see some minutes here from some of these meetings would be nice, so we can have some questions would be nice in a report or something.
Board meeting, we could send minutes out. I believe we do that on other boards. We send minutes out. Who do we send minutes out? You, I know, I've seen it.
I have
Next minute.
4 questions. Would echo Deputy Reeve Clausen's comments around procurement and just the concerns that Deputy Reeve Clausen expressed. My first question is, you had referenced some federal funding through CMHC. Would that be like potential funding? Would that be repayable, or is that capital money that would be given, or would it be in the format of a loan?
Yes, is what I was told. There's some money comes as seed money, and you can get that earlier on to help pay for the process. You can get a low interest loan from them, payable in 50 years. And there is some forgiveness of the loan.
Okay.
What the percentages are, how much, I don't have a clue.
Okay. No, I just was curious. I'm not that familiar with how CMHC works. You had used the word scared from information that the consultant had shared. Can you just clarify what you meant? And I'm like that he had scared the board well or something. I can't remember exactly how it was phrased.
Board was in the dreaming mode. We had a nice building, right? We haven't had anybody come in and apply costs to it. You know what the thing costs because other buildings are getting built and they apply that number. Fine. But the board hasn't sat down and tried to get any money. That's it. So he come in and said, you need this much money. We got to find it someplace. Maybe we can't find it all. Maybe people have to pay more. It's all the maybes come out. And yeah, so the board had to sit up and listen. Yeah, it's time that we get to work on the financial part. And it'll be as much work as the building part. It's just another phase of it. So, like Rick said, we could have sat down, maybe done the funding thing first without the building and then see what we can build. It's just one or the other, or does it make that much difference at the end of the day? If we, with the plan we have, is just the schematic, and it looks nice and it's got 165 beds. If we can only build 100, maybe a floor comes off and we got our 100 beds. There's nothing been that much loss. It's a schematic. It's not the blueprints. It's the blueprints that cost the money. The schematic is, can we build there? Is there services there? A piece of land big enough? Is there environmental? All that's done. That has to be done for it's 100 bed or 160 bed or 200 bed if the province comes through with 110 beds. We don't know. We just don't know. When we find out, then we can move on it. So right now, all intents and purposes, we are working on 110 beds until the government tells us about the 65. If we don't get that, if it goes to some other outfit, then that decision is not ours to make.
And I'll echo Councillor Bigger's comments. I do recall some substantive conversation around costing and debt servicing and how the project might be financed. And I guess echo Deputy Reeve Clausen too, just about the heavy responsibility that we have in managing taxpayer dollars, whether they're requisitioned or directly paid to us as a municipality, and just how critical I think that is. My next question was cost to date for the design, I guess for the schematics, what that total cost has been so far.
581,000, something like that's my memory.
And have the costs for the build, are they being kept separate on your financials, like under
Of course.
a capital project? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any other questions regarding Councillor Custer's report? Do we have a motion on the floor? No, okay.
I'm not done yet.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, on the 22nd, we had a Wademsa meeting. And just to clarify, we have not got the extra 2 shifts yet. They are in the process. We had to send like a budget, how much it cost today, and we have to send a budget how much it would cost with the new shift and how much more. I'm not aware of any money coming to us yet. Looks like we're looking for 2 new paramedics. We'll run these 2 new shifts. The 2 new shifts are 12-hour shifts for 1 car. That is currently a 96-hour shift. That'll move to 2 12-hour shifts, 24/7. The other car, which is currently a 96-hour shift, will move to a 42-hour week shift, Monday to Friday. Doesn't have 8 to 4. It works out to 42 hours on 5 days. That keeps it the same as the 96-hour shift that they were actually working. That's what they decided. Anyway, we need 2 new paramedics to fill them positions. We haven't got the funding yet. They're still working it out. Rob's busy doing that. What you were talking about, the 80 calls that we didn't go to the city, or the 72, the difference, that's part of that 10-point initiative that they are doing, and we could get a presentation from AHS to fill us in on this shift. So that initiative, being that I haven't seen it, but I think Rob said it was 0.6 or something, that they actually try and leave cars at home for emergencies. And beforehand, our cars were gone to Calgary all the time, or wherever. They're trying to leave them at home, and it made a difference of 80 calls into the city. So that part seems to be working. We get our money eventually for our other 2 paramedics and change them shifts. We'll be a happy place. So yeah, I can't say much more about these 10 points. I haven't read it. I haven't studied it. I was just hoping that we would get a presentation sometime. And if we're not going to have we'll see what the next Madame's meeting brings. If we're not going to have a partnership meeting for a long time, maybe we're just looking for come in and talk to the different municipalities. But that's what's going on in Madame's. To the way I heard it, I don't know. Maybe
I wrote down 2 weeks ago, the new shift started.
yeah.
I don't know what that came from.
Yeah, well, I phoned Rob too. I thought it'd be instant. We got our 2 shifts, but I was just talking to him. And
Maybe it was just confirmed 2 weeks ago for them.
yeah, I think it's confirmed, but they haven't implemented it yet. That's the way AHS works.
And you're right. I did have the 10-point,
yeah,
which I don't know either.
whatever that's called. too.
Whatever that is, yeah. Yeah, I did have that.
Yeah, it's something new anyway that's coming down.
But it's nice that something is working.
Yeah, it's working in our favor anyway. Yeah, so that's my report. If there's any questions, I'll move it as such.
Any other questions for Councillor Kester? All in favor? Motion is carried. Absolutely. Yes.
Sorry, Rick.
We will
When you gotta go,
break.
you gotta go.
We'll break until 10:35. We'll take 10.
Thank you.
Thank you for
You have been
reminding.
muted. To unmute yourself, press the star key twice.
That ever gets if he ever goes for a DP, that will get testy.
Yeah, there's too many people. Well, look what
Mute off.
does.
Oh, that's the mail truck.
Yeah.
Do a 1-minute warning. Well, just because I don't see Deputy Reeve Clausen yet. I know we're already late, but, maybe we're not. 1 minute we have. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order, and we will move to 3.7. Councillor Larison.
Okay, so my report's on the server as well. I won't say too much about it because we've gone over reports a lot. I'll just add that I did sit in on a couple of meetings for Shannon while she was gone, and it was quite interesting, actually. I heard the farmers market too thing, but I thought, I wonder what kind of farmers market they're going to have in May, because there's not a lot of produce ready at that time, but hey, whatever. Interesting part is SWAT was quite interested in having information on a booth at that trade show, so I think, as Shannon said, there's definitely some information on there. SWAT's decided that they would like to put some positive spins on some of their stuff, so I gave them some information. I'm pretty sure I copied you on it, on the percentage of people, of teenagers that use cannabis and stuff. So what they want to do is say, in this report that I gave them, it was ballpark, if I remember right, between 75 and 80% of teens that don't use it, and they'd rather promote that message than the percentage that does use it, which I think is a really good thing. Other than that, yesterday I was down in Drumheller for onboarding and getting the new landfill manager in place, so I'm hoping that's going to be the beginning of some good stuff for us there. Now we can focus on fixing some of the bylaws and stuff. And that's about it for my report, so if there's any questions, I'll take them. Otherwise, I'll move my report be accepted as presented.
Any questions for Councillor Larison? I love your enthusiasm for fixing the bylaws. Love it.
Oh, they need it.
That's awesome.
And thank you, Councillor Larson, for filling in for me. For
Oh, you're
my
more than welcome.
Little break.
At first I was hesitant, but when I found out they were Zoom meetings, I went, oh, I got this.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's nice.
Any questions for Councillor Larison? All in favor? Motion is carried. We will move to 4.1, Cio Report.
Good morning, Council. Brian from Administration. On page 26 of your agenda package is my monthly report. Some very, very good news to report this month, and it came from the provincial budget, is that the education requisition is only going to increase by 1.5% roughly. So in our interim budget, we had a placeholder of 11 million. So we ended up pulling that requisition number, and it's just below 10.2 million. So what that will do for our overall budget is that it will decrease that requisition amount by roughly 800,000, which will be a direct savings onto those onto ratepayers. That was very excellent news. Besides that, T4s were issued this month, so all of council should have received one as well. And if there are any questions about the resolution tracker, which starts on page 28. The report is there. If there are any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Any questions for CAO Henderson? Councillor Kester?
I'll move the CEO's report and motion tracker.
And the resolution tracker? Any questions? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. We will move to 4.12.
Yes, good morning, Council. So Brian from Administration today. We're just updating a human resource policy, and we're doing this just to be more consistent with our current policies, just kind of the format and having better details in these policies. So what Council should expect from Administration in the future is to have our changes to policies in green and any deletions in kind of highlighted in red. So we picked up that format actually from the fall RMA that we found that very, very useful and kind of easier for council to read. Unless the policy is kind of a full rewrite, then we'll probably just end up just kind of having two policies for, however, for amendments like this, we're striving to have it clear for council and clear for the public in the future. So here, yeah, all the changes are here. We ended up taking out the schedule of work from hours. We found that administration was spending quite a bit of time on altering the hours, just dependent with COVID, overtime, seasonal kind of staff as well. And sometimes these positions do change as well. So it just kind of made it better administratively to remove the hours. If there are any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Any questions regarding the policy update?
So just a question.
Start at that end and work our way down.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're up. Councillor Larson,
okay.
then Councillor Kester, then Deputy Ruth Clausen.
Base annual work hours, full-time salaried employees, $19.50 for administration, $2,080 for public works and ASB. Are the public works and ASB people, are they overtime eligible or something, or what's the difference there?
Yes, they are.
Okay,
so they
that's
are
all I
overtime.
need to know.
Yeah.
Makes total sense now.
Councillor Kester.
Times, hours of work. You got a range 7 to 3:30 and such and such. I was aware there was an employee once who would like to start work at 4 o'clock in the morning, 3:30. When there was snow events, he could get out there and push snow before the traffic come. Is that going to be allowed, and will that be safe for him to work, or
Yeah.
individuals to do that?
So that still does occur. So the employee, there are a few that will get up super early and drive the roads, do some road checks, come to the admin building, clear the parking lot before all other staff show up. So yeah, that would kind of continue as well.
Are any of these changes going to affect our budget?
No, they won't. So these changes are kind of currently happening. It's just more of just an administrative, I guess, bother to go back, amend the hours every time. So yeah, everything here is already currently in practice. It's just kind of making it clear for employees and public and council as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Looking for a motion to approve the amended policy. Oh, Councillor Larson.
I'll move that Wheatland County approve amendments to the Human Resources Policy 6.2.4/ hours of work rest.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you, CAO Henderson. We'll move to 4.21, Corporate and Financial Services Report.
Good morning, Reeve Lincoln Council. Tracy from the Corporate and Financial Services team. I'm here to report the February activities that our team completed. Shortly, you'll receive a 101 assessment presentation from our Manager of Assessment. In financial services, we are onboarding and testing our new software that automates processing of invoices. We're quite excited about this. This project has taken a little longer than we anticipated, but basically, currently, we're receiving hard copies, paper copies of invoices, and signing, coding, etc. With the new process, our accounts payable clerk, Rachel, will be scanning each invoice into the system, and then we will automatically be able to send it to whatever staff we need to for coding, approval, signatures. So we think it will create quite a few efficiencies. One, being able to find invoices. You can, type in a company name and all of them will come up. So we're quite excited about that. We are still performing the year-end field audit work until March 18th. So we have finance staff just answering any questions or just providing any information that's required. Also, staff have notified the public that the county will no longer use red tags for overdue accounts. So this was published in each invoice on social media, and we are also adding a letter explaining that into each bill as well. Under information technology, vendors are being engaged regarding council chambers and ECC audiovisual systems refresh. So we'll be contacting staff and in the future council as well as for needs and wants of this refresh. Laserfiche forms for utilities have been loaded onto the website for residents to access, which includes autopay and change of address. So we've added quite a few forms, probably for the entire organization, fillable forms. So we're hoping to make it user-friendly for our residents. We will have a kickoff meeting for our digital records project, and that's scheduled to start in mid-March, I believe. And then under GIS, we're working with Rocky View County in preparation for the 2022 orthophoto acquisition. The RFP will be issued on February 23rd, and the deadline is on March 22nd. And that ends my brief update. Are there any questions?
Thanks. Just on the notice for utility bills, so what are we doing instead of red tags?
So we're informing all residents, and we're sending out the letters and just making sure that they're aware that there won't be red tags in the future.
So is there still a provision to terminate their service if they don't pay, or do we just refund the tax?
Yep. We'll follow policy and the act and everything like that. Yeah.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Yeah. I did actually get some feedback about the red tags, and that residents actually appreciated not having the red tags displayed for others in the community to see. So
sometimes that's the only thing that makes them pay, though. All right, it's honest. It's true.
Any other questions for corporate and financial services?
It's a silly question, but I know Adobe fairly well. What's Nitro Pro going to do for us? Is it going to mess us all up?
I'm going to call on Matt from IT to answer that question. That's very specific.
So through the Reeve to Council, we have started migrating most of our server-side and desktop-side services to the cloud. And Adobe does not function in that environment terribly well with their updater. And we did a cost analysis, and they were by far heads and above more expensive than their competitors for what we felt was as good or superior products. So they, after a bunch of review, they ended up being our selection, and a bunch of training will be coming out and information stuff for staff and for council as far as any minor differences that there might be between the two programs.
Okay, I'm going to hold you to the minor.
Yep, I'm confident. Feel good.
And that's good. I'm glad, because then I'm hoping that I won't get those annoying Adobe update things.
Correct.
All the time.
Yes, that is another
good job, Matt.
advantage to that. Yes.
Good job, Matt.
Thank you.
Just to note, one very big highlight of Nitro Pro over Adobe is that Nitro Pro does free digital signatures, like the auditable, traceable ones. Right now we use a program, I forget what it's called.
DocuSign.
DocuSign, or it could be DocuSign, and it actually costs, I think we pay per signature. So a lot of internal documents will kind of just do signatures that we have internal processes here. Any external ones we'll use DocuSign. I forget the name of the program, but
X1?
OneSpan. Yes.
Oh yeah,
yes.
OneSpan.
So it'll actually be a cost savings for that. Plus, it'll just allow us to use those signatures internally, which will be more secure. I've talked to Corey and Matt about it, and it's a really good program. Looking forward to it.
Any other questions for corporate and financial services? A motion to accept the report as information.
Also move.
Councillor Laprise has moved. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will move to 4.22, donation policy.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nikki, and I'm the Manager of Financial Services. I'm here today to present the RFD for Council with regards to the Corporate and Financial Services Donations Policy 2.8 as amended. Please refer to page 43 of 121 in your package. As a brief overview, last year Financial Services identified that Wheatland County's donations policy required additional clarity and of process to ensure compliance with CRA guidance on a go-forward basis. Previously, tax receipts were issued for donations for charities that, although they were known and reputable as nonprofit organizations in the county, they did not have a confirmed registered charitable status with the CRA. Because of this, Wheatland County would issue a receipt as a qualified donee and flow the funds through to the charitable organization. In adding clarity and maintaining compliance with CRA guidance, it was determined that tax receipts should be obtained by donors directly from unregistered organizations that will ultimately utilize and control the donated funds. Financial Services took the following steps. We notified all stakeholders via a letter, and as a courtesy, we provided direction for organizations on how to obtain charitable status. We allowed a grace period for completion. The proposed donation policy can be found on page 46 in your package. The current donation policy can be found on page 50 in your package. And please also see the letter provided to stakeholders on page 52 in your agenda. As well, we provided the direction for obtaining charitable status on page 53. It is the recommendation from an administration that Council approves the Corporate Financial Services Donation Policy 2.8 as amended. Are there any questions?
Just a question around organizations that you provided the guidance on how to obtain charitable status themselves, and what's the feedback been? Are there going to be a significant number of organizations that are impacted by the change to the policy?
I will call on Joel for that.
Morning, Reeve-Link.
Good morning.
Yes, to answer your question, there wasn't a substantial number of organizations that were involved here, and we have provided them the documentation. We didn't receive a lot of direct feedback from them. It was more of a courtesy, just outlining what the process could be if they decided that they did want to obtain their charitable status. Because as you probably know, it's not a requirement. It's only a requirement if they want to issue tax receipts. So.
Fantastic, thank you. Any other questions?
Sorry, I guess I'm just not following closely enough, but so if they don't declare charitable status, would we still provide this service to them, this donation flow through? If
essentially, we're trying to provide clarity in the amended policy so that we would understand that they should be receiving the funds directly and work with their donors directly.
So we're trying to get out of the process
Yes.
of doing this. Okay,
Yes.
that's exactly what I wanted. Thanks.
I agree with this, and it's great work. So I'll make the motion that council approve the corporate and financial services donation policy 2.8 as amended.
Motion on the floor. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. And welcome back. I don't think we've formally welcomed you back, but welcome. We will move to 4.23, Assessment 101. Good morning and welcome.
Morning, Council.
Deputy Reeve Clausen says you should have brought donuts, but I think Assessment 101 is enough excitement in and of itself.
Well, as part of our code of ethics, we don't want to be perception as impacting anybody's
That's right.
decisions. So thank you for the offer, though.
Neutrality.
So we could start on page 40 or 56 of the agenda. And actually, I'm going to switch to a PowerPoint because we're adding a few more pages that aren't included in the original. So we'll hand out those pages as the information starts discussion. It's an honor and a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak to council and give you guys a little bit of information about Assessment 101. My name is Dennis Clem. Actually, sorry, let me set up my speaking notes here. I'm the manager of assessment services. I have 1 or 2 years experience with the county, actually closer to 25 years. I am part of a professional organization and I have a designation of AMAA, which stands for Accredited Municipal Assessor of Alberta. Not many people realize that assessors are professional designated individuals. It's a bit of a task to get that profession or that designation, and we have a code of ethics that we strongly adhere to. Plus, we're subject to disciplinary action from other members or from the public in general if they have a concern with our performance or any sort of situation.
So that's why you didn't bring donuts.
Exactly. So I would like to introduce my assessment team. Cheryl, just introduce yourself, please.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Cheryl Clemenson. I've been with Wheatland County since 2010, and I've also been with the assessment department since 2011. In 2017, I acquired the position of assessor, and I've been doing that ever since. And I'm currently working towards my designation. So, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And our newest staff member, Adele, she's been 3 months with the county. As you may recall, Jacqueline, who was my assessment assistant, she's moved on to property tax, and it's a great fit because we have a close working relationship. So, but we're really pleased to have Adele join our team. She has some legal assistant background, so she's fits in really well with our team.
Welcome, Adele. We're glad to have you.
So before we start our presentation, this is some perception that the public sometimes has of properties. This is how you or the buyer could see your property, how your lender might see the property. It's actually up on the screen. It's not on the presentation. On the agenda items. And sometimes how your appraiser may view the property, and it's a misconception that the assessor would think your property is worth that kind of value, but some public tend to think that. And I think this is what Brian's house actually, a U.S. assessor in the county there. So I'd like to, assessment is a fairly technical task, and there's a lot of technical terms in the assessment profession. I would like to try to simplify that a bit and kind of give you some key terms that are used in the assessment profession and give you a bit of understanding of what qualifies as the different assessment classes and associated tax situations with them. So if you choose to, The detailed information is available in the Municipal Government Act. There's Section 9 of the MGA deals with assessment. And then there's also the matters relating to assessment and tax is a regulation that helps clarify some sort of more specific terms. And I'd be more than willing to send you any of that information if you want to pursue that for extra information. So Class 1 is residential assessment. Most people think that's a residence, and in most cases it is. But technically in the assessment legislation, it's a default class. It's something that the assessor doesn't classify as farmland, non-residential, or machine equipment. So typically, it can be you can have an acreage with just a garage on the property, it could be residential class. You have a farm property with the residence, and we have to assess a hypothetical 3-acre parcel, and that's all residential class. That farm property could also have an attached or detached garage that has the Cadillac parked in there that isn't a farm vehicle, and that would be classified as residential. So it's, besides all the sort of, all the hamlet properties that are residentially zoned, vacant parcels would be residential class. So that's the, it's a, you'll see later in the breakdown, it's, even though it's not a large assessment base, but it requires a significant amount of work to prepare that assessment. And we'll get in, it's assessed at market value. So then we go on to Class 2, and I should say actually, if any questions arise during the presentation, I encourage you to stop me and you can deal with the question as it arises if any situation that. Class 2 is non-residential. In simplistic terms, a commerce or industry takes place. It's assessed at market value, and some of the more larger typical situations is auto repair shops, gas stations. But even in a residence, if you're running, say, a hairdresser shop, you could have a portion of your residence as non-residential. We have some auto repair shops that are run on farm properties, and maybe a portion of the building is farm, and the other portion is auto repair. So we go to essentially we have the ability, and we do allocate based on a reasonable estimation of what percentage of the building is non-res versus residential, or it could even be farm building. Go ahead, Amber.
Just a question for home-based businesses. How would you sort of be aware of that, recognizing that some of our classes of home-based businesses require a development permit? Does that information go to you? And then how do you recognize that you would need to assess that on a home-based business where a development permit is not required? And I know I should know this by now, but I don't.
Okay, so just so I understand that question, the first part is if there's a development permit, we do get the information from the development. Okay. So we would recognize those home-based businesses. And now, depending on the degree of, if they occupy less than 5% of the residents, like if it's a real temporary short-term situation, we probably wouldn't have any assessment placed on that. But if there's a development permit, those are probably more likely we would have a non-residential assessment. The other way we find out non-residential use on properties is we re-inspect properties once every 5 years. We have a 20% re-inspection cycle. And so when we're re-inspecting the property, we look for signs at the property, at the driveway, something visible. If we see a bunch of vehicles parked and they look like oil fill related, we'll ask them, because unfortunately, there are still individuals that do development without necessary development permits. Even a couple of years ago, we found a new house built without a development permit. It's rare, but it does happen. So that's the purpose of doing a 20% re-inspection cycle, to ensure that our information is as accurate as we can get it. The development permits, obviously, we go in the year that happens, but in the re-inspection cycle, we find out information. And we also have the discretion, if we sense that an individual is maybe not telling us the full story of the situation, we'll use our investigative skills. We may look at Kijiji, we may look at Facebook to see if they're advertised as some sort of business, but they're not really in advertising that on their property. We use that in a rare circumstance. Most of the individuals or businesses that are legit, if you will, they typically have some kind of signage on their property, and most of them would have development permits. Some of them are grandfathered in from years ago that they may not have updated their development permit. I know there was an exercise, I think it was a couple of years ago, where development was asked to partner with us to see if they should try to permit all those properties, and I think the decision of council today was we'll deal it on a case-by-case basis. So, does that answer your question or any follow-up?
It does. That's fantastic. One follow-up, just to close the loop. If you discover a development that was not permitted, is there a process in place where then that information is given to development and planning to follow up on the permitting piece?
Yes, we usually try to advise them, especially if it's a new residence. The only sort of exception to that is farm buildings versus residential buildings on a farm property. Most of those have been built at the time of the house. Usually we have most of those garages assessed as residential, but occasionally there could be maybe a use of a building that we think now is residential that's been built for quite a while. We wouldn't necessarily follow up with the notification act, but if it's a newer type of a building, newer type of business, we do have situations where some vacant acreages, individuals buy them, they start potentially running a business there. We usually, like anytime there's a potential status change, like if the acreage is owned by a farmer and sold to an acreage owner, if you will, we usually flag that to look at the use, depending on the time of year it's sold. If it's sold in December, we'll flag it for the following year. If it's sold in January, we'll flag it for this year to see what's happening on the property, because it's most likely going to switch from farm use, exempt or minimal tax on it, to residential and sometimes even other use.
Fantastic, thank you.
So some other terms used in the non-residential category is building or structure. That would be the buildings that house what we'll get to in the description, class 4 of machinery equipment. So there is also a subclass of non-residential, which is linear assessment. And linear essentially straddles many municipalities. It's assessed at a regulated rate because it's such a unique property. To try to establish a market value in that is pretty much impossible. And the biggest linear components in our municipality would be the wells and pipelines. But then some of the smaller types of components, electric power is actually starting to become a bigger component as additional wind farms and solar farms start commissioning up. Or I should say power generation. The telecom and cable TV is part of the linear assessment, and telecommunications, so the cell towers, and then the railway. Railway actually just switched to linear assessment class about 4 years ago. It used to be just non-residential assessment. It was always assessed on a regulated rate, and it's kind of tied to the tonnage that travels on the rail. There's a rate kind of calculation based on that. Class 3 is farmland assessment, or farmland class. Sorry, I just need to. Now, many of you realize or probably understand what the typical farmland assessment would mean, but there's some sort of specific categories that qualify as farmland. And first off, it has to be land that's used, or farming operations, it has to meet the definition of farming operations. That means it's used in the raising, production, and sale of agriculture products. And it can include land that's used for raising trees. Now, we're talking a tree farm. There are situations where native trees are part of pasture, so that still qualifies as farmland. But we also have trees that are planted as a shelter belt on an acreage property. That's not a farm operation anymore. That's just preparing their property for residential use. Shrubs, bees, fish, crops, forage, so birds, livestock, or sod. Those all qualify as, and most of these are sort of intensive type operations from the livestock perspective. Farmland assessed at a regulated rate, and it has a provincial base rate of $3.50 an acre, and the best land in the county is probably around 90%. So a 160-acre parcel at 90% would be assessed around $50,400. That's about $3.15 an acre. Conversely, the market value of that land is probably closer to $6,000 an acre or more. So it gets a bit of a preferential assessment treatment, but it's not like it's provincially legislated. We have to value it that way. Whereas if you compare it to residential, it's at market value, and sometimes discussions occur about that variance in the valuation. Class 4 is machinery and equipment, and that's anything that's used in the manufacturing. Well, it's the materials, devices, and fittings and installations or appliances or apparatuses that's used in the manufacturing or processing of a product. So it's assessed at regulated rates. And M&E also gets a bit of a preferential assessment treatment in the sense that it gets immediate 25% depreciation, plus it's assessed at a statutory level 77%. So if it's a brand new item, say $100,000 cost, or 100 million, whatever the number is, it'd be 58% of that. And we have bucket elevators grain elevators or high throughput elevators that are deemed M&E. In the oil field sector, we have separators, dehydes, booster comps. Oil field sector is the largest M&E in our category, and there's a more specialized class we'll get into a bit. I'll let Cheryl take on the next slide here.
All right, so the next one we wanted to talk about are the key dates for the assessment and preparation of the land and the improvements. So first of all is the market evaluation date. So that is July 1st of the assessment year, which is always the year preceding the tax year. So for example, for July 1st, 2021, market evaluation is used for the 2022 tax year. Next is the physical condition date, which is December 31st of 2021. An assessment must be placed on any progressive, incomplete residential or non-res improvements and valued at that July 1st, 2021 market valuation. So for an example, if a house starts getting built on November 1st, we will do an inspection by usually about mid-December, and it's just for estimate that the house was at the lockup stage. So that would be roughly about 40% of the complete value of the property would be once it's completed. And once that value is placed on the property, it would be that July 1st, 2021 market valuation. Okay, so the next is machinery and equipment, and which is not the designated industrial property. It must be operational by the physical condition date of December 31st, 2021 to be accessible and subject to property tax in the 2022 tax year. So for example on that, there's dryers and cleaners at the high throughput elevators. And the last one is a designated industrial property, which includes M&E, linear, must be operational by the physical condition date of October 31st, 2021 to be accessible and subject to property tax in 2022. So for example on that, separators and compressors at oil field and gas well sites. And like you can see, the key takeaway from the DIP properties is that the October 31st date is different compared to the December 31st, 2021s. So it is a earlier date. Okay.
Thank you, Cheryl. So now we're bringing kind of a new slide that we haven't presented to council before, but I know there's been some discussion and maybe wanted to get a bit of clarity how an acreage property is treated versus a farm property versus a Hutterite colony. So this is trying to portray how the assessment is similar in some ways and differ in other ways. And we kind of tried to create a hypothetical assessment here. So a 3-acre parcel that has a newer house, say 1,500 square feet with basement finish, and in the same geographic area, you could have a newer farm home that has 2 residences with roughly 1,500 square feet and some basement finish as well. Or in the same geographic area, you could have a Hutterite colony that potentially has 24 newer side-by-side units. So from that perspective, the residential class buildings would be the residence itself, plus on the acreage there would be most likely a detached garage or potentially attached garage, and the farm homes could have either a detached or attached garage. But the Hutterite colony likely doesn't have any other residential buildings. Most of their buildings are situated quite a ways from the residence. They don't really have storage space for their personal vehicles. They don't really have personal vehicles per se. So the hypothetical assessment on that residence would be $300,000. For the farm, 2 residences, $600,000. And for the Hutterite colony, the 24 units, assuming they're all complete, about $5.2 million. The farmland ownership, the acreage owner has no other land, just that acreage. The farmer has maybe 8 quarters, and the Hutterite colony has, say, hypothetically 28 quarters. The reason that farmland assessment is kind of important is that gives them the ability to get the exemption on their residence. So the legislation stipulates that the primary residence can gain an exemption of $61,540, and each additional residence can gain an exemption of $30,770. So on the first farm home situation, the way that $92,310 exemption is calculated is we would add the $61,540 for the primary plus the $30,770. And they would have to have enough farmland to generate that. Now with 8 quarters, probably 2 quarters of good farmland, you'd have enough farmland to generate that. On the Hutterite colony, you would take 23 units times the $30,770, which is that secondary exemption, and then you would add the $61,540. That's how the $769,250 exemption or reduction in the assessment is computed. So then to determine the taxable assessment, we would add the site plus any, or take off any exemption, and oh, actually I jumped ahead. I forgot to mention that there's the garage potential on each property, and you know that'd add roughly $40,000 value for the garage, or if there's 2 of them, $80,000. Hutterite colonies have 0. And then there's going to be a 3-acre site assessed. So assuming they're in the same geographic area, the 3-acre site could be at $110,000. Just so you know, that's probably the lower end of value, or the mid-size. The 3-acre sites on the west side of the county are closer to that $250,000, almost $300,000. So the taxable assessment would, as you can see the difference there, residential, if they'd be fully at market. $450,000 is the approximate market value of their property with the residence. The farm home site would be a hypothetical 3-acre at market, and plus the taxable portion on the residence would leave that $697 taxable for their property. And then the Hutterite colony, their taxable assessment would be that $4.6 million. So the 24 units, they only get the exemption on the first residence, or the second residence and the first. And if a farmer had 5 residences, they'd only get that $30,000 on the additional residences.
Dennis?
Yes.
The 3 acres for the Hutterite colony, is that 3 acres isn't enough?
Unfortunately, you have a very good point there, but the legislation stipulates we're only allowed to put 1 3-acre site. Doesn't matter if you have 24 units or you have 2 units. And even if they're in separate corners of the county, of the quarter section, we still only put 1 3-acre site. And that's the matters relating to assessment tax legislation. So it's the same treatment if you're anywhere in Alberta. So linear property versus designated industrial property. And just a little bit of background, designated industrial property has kind of been a newer classification. In 2018, the provincial assessor took over the preparation of what they've termed as designated industrial property. However, I'm still a delegate and under contract with municipal or the provincial assessor to prepare that assessment because they haven't been able to attract enough staff to take on the work or to the task of preparing the designated industrial property. I'm still on contract till March of 2023. They're trying to acquire staff, and we'll see what happens in 2023. So I'm just going to explain the differences between linear property and designated industrial property. We've kind of touched a little bit on this, but pipes and gas distribution, pipelines I should say, and gas distribution by far is our largest assessment base of linear property. Wells is the next largest, and then these other ones are part of the linear classification. Electric power systems would be the power lines and the transmission or distribution lines, and the power generation would be like the wind or solar. It has to be above a certain megawatt, which is, there's micro generation. It used to be 1 megawatt, and I believe that's 5 megawatts now. So if you have a small solar operation on your own, then it's not linear property, it's actually non-residential property. And railway, we have 2 lines, but really 1 main line. Now the designated industrial property, it's facilities that are regulated by Alberta Energy Regulator, which would be your oil field stuff. Alberta Utilities Commission, that's your cell communications, your towers. And the Canadian Energy Regulator, previously the National Energy Board, that'd be your power components there. That's the buildings and the land, the sites that are at the solar farms are part of designated industrial property, but the actual wind turbine or solar panel that generates the power is part of linear assessment. So the DIP property includes the following types of installations at oil field facilities. It would be your separators, your dehyds, your gas plants, your compressor stations, batteries, and so on. DIP includes properties to be determined as major plants and classified in the M&E manual or minister's guidelines. We have 3 major plants in the county. So this slide is designed to just give you a little bit of an understanding of what DIP property is versus what's, not sure, is there still a pointer here? Matt, do you know if there's still? Lost that?
One on the desk there, Dawn is sitting at, the silver pen.
Okay, well, I'll just do it from the description then. You can see where the metal building is in the middle of the photo there. That's what would be deemed as a, oh, do you have a pointer there? Thank you. Thank you, Reese. Oh, yeah, hold it. Okay, there we go. Perfect. So this is what would be classed as a DIP non-residential. It's part of the building and structure. You see the little vessel sticking out, and which is more convenient for council? Which that one? Okay. The little vessel sticking out of that building is part of the separator package, and the separator is part of the machinery and equipment. So prior to 2018, I was preparing the assessment because it was all machinery equipment. There was no classification of DIP, designated industrial property. I still am preparing it under the hybrid contract for the province. This tank is part of the process, and it's part of machinery equipment. However, these pump jacks, they're part of the well assessment. They're under a standardized rate with the well. And then there's a pipeline coming in This pipeline could be on either the inlet or the outlet side, and essentially the way DIP property is classified, it's between the inlet and the outlet, so where the line comes in from the well, and then once the production's happened, the outlet is where the rest of the product would flow. This valve typically is kind of the delineation point, and then this pipeline here would be part of the linear pipeline assessment. Just like these pump jacks, they're actually attached or in close proximity to the well. They're pumping the product out of the well, the emulsion or the oil out of the well. So that's just a quick kind of a visual overview of the linear versus dip assessment. So here's the breakdown of the linear assessment. And as you can see, the linear assessment decreased by about 6.19 million, but the largest composition of our assessment base for linear is the pipelines, PL's pipelines, 625 million. So it's a significant percentage, over 50% of our base. And then the next largest is the wells and pipelines. And with the way the economy is going for oil and gas sector, there's been a lot of wells either disconnect, like shut in, or pipelines, same thing, have been abandoned, or well, not, even wells abandoned. And so their assessment, once they're non-producing, it gets reduced, and once they're actually reclaimed, it gets down to zero. So that's the unfortunate circumstance why we're losing assessment. You can see pipelines, we lost about 2 million, and wells, we were fortunate that we still had some new wells being drilled, so we were ahead of the curve as far as the overall assessment impact. Plus, there's factors that impact the assessment calculation, the assessment year modifier, and there's been a little change in assessment year modifier, which also helps impact the assessment. So based on that 6.19 million reduction, that equates to about a loss, if the mill rate stayed the same for municipal, about $52,000 in tax dollars. Now this one looks real, and this is where we have to hand out the sheets to Cheryl, please. So I'll start explaining on this. This is what I just finalized the assessment at last week there. So unfortunately I wasn't able to provide this information in the package. This looks a lot of information in here, but I wanted to first kind of break it down to the green highlighted lines is the DIP, Designated Industrial Assessment. So I still prepare that on behalf of the province, but technically they have the administration of it. So there's certain procedures they provide for us to follow. The yellow is the linear assessment, and then the white is strictly a municipal assessment, which I'm actively involved in as well. You can see, just as a quick overview, farmland, there's a little bit of reduction in the assessment. And if we look at the line 103, which is residential, that's where the biggest change in assessment was, 60 million increase in assessment. And really all you need to do is, even though we have the detailed assessment codes, it all boils down to the bottom right-hand corner, because that's the classification of those specific assessment codes into res, farmland, or non-res assessment. And that's the later, I think in April sometime, the mill rate calculation will be done, and it'll be tied to those assessment classes. So you can see that residential overall saw a 58 million increase, and non-residential saw really a nominal increase, 4.2 million. Our total change in assessment, 62 million. Now, non-res is still a large percentage of our assessment, 63%. And if you just look to the left a little bit, you can see that linear is 31% of the total assessment base, and DIP, non-residential, so the buildings, is about 3.8%, and then the dip machinery equipment is 12%. So we got 46% of our assessment base is in pretty much oil field type properties. Most of that dip is, there's a few telecommunications that isn't, but the biggest percentage is oil field related. Next slide is the chart there, and this is showing a 5-year change in assessment class. And I think the biggest takeaway I wanted you to... Oh, I got these stapled in the wrong order. Sorry about that, or did I skip the... I might have stapled these in the wrong order, sorry about that. So the last page, I guess, is the chart. The intent of this is to show you that farmland really is a stagnant assessment. And if anything, it slowly is a smaller percentage of the assessment base, or very nominal change in the percentage of the assessment base. Residential, however, has been increasing. In 2017, it was 27%, 27.6, and now it's 31. And that's because we have new residences built, we have new acreages built, new shops, and so on. The blue, which is the non-residential, it's kind of a slow marginal change, and it's actually decreasing a bit, mainly because some non-residential buildings have, either the market value has slid a bit on them, some businesses have shut down, those valuations come off. The machinery equipment, which is kind of that yellowish color, that's it's sliding a bit too, and mainly because the big percentage of our machinery equipment is oil field related, and the equipment's being disconnected or blinded off or removed, and therefore it doesn't become assessable anymore. And the largest percentage of our assessment base, but it's starting to erode a bit too, is the linear assessment. We've lost, not quite 2% in 5 years of the assessment base. And linear is a significant, as you saw in the previous slide, it's a significant amount of the assessment. Hang on a sec. Well, I won't bother putting it up on the slide, but the compare 2020 to 2021 Hamlet assessments, I just brought that in so that you could see sort of what the average assessment is for a house that's, house and residential class of assessment. You could see middle of the line there, Lyalta, which includes Lake Murrayfield. That's our highest Hamlet assessment. It increased from 483,000 average value to 507, and you can see the respective changes in assessment. The reason probably Lake Murrayfield has increased a little more than the rest is twofold. There's newer houses being added. Some of those newer houses are starting to see a higher value, if you will. Plus, the market value change, I think, is probably the bigger impact. There seems to be more stability in that neighborhood now. I've spoken to a few influential individuals in that neighborhood, and they echo my thoughts that the market value has probably increased since the county's taken over. So, pardon me?
I'm sure you'll talk to him again.
Oh, you might know this.
I think I know.
So that's, you can see the overall average for change in assessment is just for the hamlets is 342. And for the overall average change for the county, I'll just give you that number here quickly. It was, so in 2020, the average residential assessment was roughly 379,000. and that's gone up to about $393,000. Now, keep in mind that seems low compared to the hamlets, but this factors in properties on the very east side of county, older houses, the whole gamut there. So when someone says, what's the average assessment for a county, it's very difficult to really quantify that because the area, the locality you're in, the type of property. If you want to do it on the raw mathematic calculations, that's what the change is. If you look at the average by hamlets, it's going to vary. So.
Dennis, I have a question. I should know this, but I don't. For farmland, so when you're looking at the quality of the farmland to decide what all do you take into consideration? Is it just the soil type, or is there other considerations?
Basically, we're trying to reflect the productivity value. So we start off with the soil type. We look at the amount of topsoil you have, the subsoil, and then we look at topography, stones, the whole gamut. Now, farmland is kind of a stagnant assessment. We had a fairly detailed review done, I'm going to say probably 15 years ago. It doesn't really change much here because we don't have really any clearing that could happen. Whereas, like when I worked in northern Alberta, there'd be clearing happen. So the farmland that contained just trees, it was assessed at very low value because it has very low productivity value. But once it's cleared, then it increases. I have found, as I'm doing inspections, I found a few sort of grass parcels in the east side of county that have been broken, some on the steeper topography. So if it is broken, we do look at it again to determine if there's a change in assessment warranted.
Or what if you put it back to grass if it's not really productive, so you put it to grass, would you reassess that?
Potentially. The sort of rule of thumb is it has to be in grass for at least 10 years before it goes back to native classification. Okay. So if it's pasture and with less than 10 years, it would probably stay as improved. Ultimately, we assign what's called a final percentage rating. We factor in all these factors. When we get into pasture land, we look at what's called a carrying capacity, how many animal units can the land accommodate. Now, we don't spend as much time on farmland due to two reasons. We don't have the resources to review that every year, but in reality, the assessment changes very little. And if you look at the assessment base, it's such a, like it's a large geographic component of our municipality. Don't get me wrong, it's a valuable resource, but from a property assessment and taxation standpoint, it generates, it's a small percentage of our assessment base.
Gotcha.
So it's, we focus our efforts on where there's more activity happening.
Thank you.
Just got a question on the farmland. Like, what is the province's thinking? Because if you went to market value on a piece of property, on a farmland, you would automatically drop your mill, or we at the county would just drop our mill rates. Would that not make your job a whole lot easier if you've got farmland that's on the east side of the county selling for, say $6,000 an acre, and you've got farmland selling on the west side for $8,000 or $9,000 an acre? Would it not make it easier on your, because you're basically doing the same thing, trying to figure out what the soil content is, right?
It's kind of a tricky question, if I will. I'll try to break it into two parts. Farmland, it can be like the market value can be impacted by a lot of factors. And in reality, it won't make my job easier. It'll probably make it a little more difficult because some of those sales in close proximity to urban fringes, if there's a potential for development, are they paying true market value, a farmland market value, or is that influenced by some development? Whereas at least now, putting everybody on a regulated value and just figuring out the productivity, what would be an easier concept is that the regulated value of $350, that was established in the early 80s, like I think 82, 83. They could 10-fold that, 20-fold that, be closer to market value, or maybe even set up regional values for that. It would still make my job a lot simpler. It would tie it a little closer to market value, and then municipalities just adjust their mill rates accordingly to generate the revenue. If I had an ability to provide input into the suggestion on that, that would be my suggestion. Just because in the urban centers, Rocky View, Foothills, where there's even more development than we have, that market value of farmland can be a really debatable topic, if you will. So it's
pretty much throughout the whole county.
Yeah, the highway
is not what it can produce.
Yeah, but well, unfortunately, we see some transactions that are pushing even that 7,000 mark. Plus, they pay extra for the irrigation rates, and it blows us away. And these appear to be viable farmers, but they're large farmers, so it's a debate. You already have some vision in your mind on this, and to get a professional practitioner to try to break that line. Where's that true market value of that productivity land? Regulated value, I think, would be, because it'd be more stable for the municipality. Once you establish that regulated value and have that productivity rating assigned to it, the chances of that changing is pretty small. It could be in the more northern regions where they have some clearing, some brushing happening, but then you'd have more stability in that assessment, which we have now. It's just it's so low in the valuation scheme, but it's a stable assessment.
The only thing, if we start monkeying with farmland values, is farmers in this municipality have to compete with farmers across the line in a different municipality. And if the rates are different for the farmland, it makes an unfair or disadvantaged municipality. I think that's why I originally come in the regulated rates will make the farming, make that part stable for the, same with the intensive livestock operations. If you tax them in one municipality, not the next, it's that competition factor that with slim margins, it means a lot.
I think a very valid comment. The only aspect I'd add to that is we haven't done, like, they're in the farmland manual, because it's a regulated manual, it's about that thick. There is a valuation for irrigated land, and it's actually a little higher than this. I think it's 6 something. And I know we have a lot of irrigated land, but when that manual was built, it was built on the premise that irrigated land that's growing specialty crops, that's where you should be recognizing the irrigation valuation on there. Most of our irrigated land is just still growing cereal and forage, if you will. Even though you get a lot more production happening on that irrigated land, there is a situation that Newell County, which is our neighbor to the east, they use the irrigation rates for some of their areas. I don't know if they use it for all. So they would have a slightly higher assessment on that irrigated land than on the, what we refer to as dry land calculation. So, but just one other comment in the competition, each jurisdiction has their own ability to set tax rates, and some set conservative tax rates on farmland, and other ones, because it's such a low value, they crank the mill rate on it a bit to try to at least get them to contribute a reasonable percentage of the municipal tax burden, if you will. And I know that's a whole separate topic, but just some overview on that.
I know we've been doing that the last few years, but I've been hearing pushback since the election been up campaigning. That they've been noticing their land is tax rates are cheaper in neighboring municipalities. Want to know why? So they say, well, it's just Woodland County. That's what we set it at.
And one, I guess, comment on that is, if you take the taxes and divide it by the acres, it's still pennies or of input costs. I think it's still a small, very small percentage of their overall cost. So even though we might be a few cents higher than the neighboring municipality, but we're not like dollars higher per se.
There's no doubt in my mind the province should be looking at that 350 an acre and starting to move it, and then we can adjust our mill rates accordingly, but I've never even heard any talk of that, so out of our purview.
I do have just maybe a discussion point for council. Dennis, would you know the last time our assessment went up? like our total like taxable assessment in the county, Wheatland County, went up, because I feel like it usually trends downwards. At least since I've started, anyways, within like the last like 6 years.
Well, like, are you talking total taxable assessment?
Yeah. So it's this year it went up 1.6%.
Last year was probably a bit of an anomaly where the assessment dropped more than usual. Most other years, the assessment has been seen an increase because the market value has been fairly stable and still kind of increasing. But the COVID situation, it took a little bit of time to catch up, because keep in mind, our 2020 tax year was based on 2019 assessment. COVID kicked in March of 2020, and people thought their property values dropped, and it took a little time for that to kind of filter through the system. We recognized that when we did the 2020 assessment for 2021. It definitely had some impact, but it wasn't as dramatic as what people perceived. And now the assessment essentially has rebounded back to pretty much the 2019 values. We've let me just double check here. I believe I have last year's presentation handy here. Last year, our overall assessment decreased by 2.8%. We lost about 114 million total. Residential, we lost 22 million and 91 in non-res. But that was a bit of I would say almost an anomaly year. Prior years, we've been typically seeing, the time frame I've been here, we've been seeing probably at least a 1 to 2% in the late 90s, early 2000s. We were seeing double-digit changes, like 10%, especially on the residential side. So I think 2020 assessment for 2021 tax year was a bit of an anomaly. The sales that we've seen, because keep in mind we do our valuation to July 1st, but we always look at what we call post-factual sales. That's sales from July 1st of 2021 to now, to see where the market is going. And market seems to be climbing so far from the sales we've seen, especially in the hot market areas like Lakes of Maryfield, Speargrass, where Lakes of Maryfield, we've probably had the most resales in the last year and a half than we've had probably the 2 years prior to that. So, and I was just going to add one comment to Councillor Scott's, if I may.
Of course.
Your organization, RMA, has the ability to lobby, which you guys know on different aspects. And I know farmland has been a discussion that has kind of sort of yo-yo effect. It comes as a hot topic item, and then BSE kicks in and it drops down. And then, so there's so many factors that sort of impact the decision. And I think I agree that the value, the regulated rate could be bumped up to 20-fold, and that'd be a conservative average market value across the province, if you will. But then I think what the ministry is concerned with is, will the municipalities reduce their tax to be what they're at before, or will they consider, and sorry, that's a different tax discussion, and I shouldn't dwell there, but I just want to give you a little perspective on that.
And Dennis, I just one other clarifying point I just kind of want to maybe get you to just discuss a little bit more to council, would just be the assessment differences from 2020 to 2021. So in the handout that Dennis provided. So some of the hamlets, they definitely did experience some increases. So ultimately, I think council, and this is a discussion for the tax rate bylaw. However, if you just notice those differences on the average assessment, so some will be new builds that add to the value, but you know, we have other communities that may not have builds in them, so those ones excluded. Just kind of the point of kind of maybe adjusting the mill rates, maybe just looking at the mill rates and leaving them consistent year over year may not be wise, unless council wants to kind of increase the municipal tax rate by this much. That's kind of just a point I'd like to kind of make and just draw council's attention to. It's just that specific point there.
You think there's a limit to us asking you repeatedly to do more with less? You can't just keep doing that?
I think this points out too, we always hear talk about affordable housing, and I look at some of our hamlets and stuff, and we do provide affordable housing in Wheatland County.
Absolutely.
They may have to drive, but there is affordable housing within Wheatland County, very affordable housing compared to our urban partners. So
it's a great
I think that's something to keep in mind when we have these talks. Is we have hamlets that are, I'll say the word dying, but they are affordable. So maybe there's some way we can help that. I don't know how, but maybe there is something. But I think Gleason, for instance, we own how much percentage of it? Well over 50% of the, and we have lots available. We have, so wanted to point that out.
If I may offer a comment here, I just want you to draw your attention to the overall change for residential. This helps kind of express I think the commentary Brian was trying to allude to. If you look, residential assessment increased by about 58 million. I was just going to get the residential municipal tax rate, but I think it's like 3.5 something. So if you froze the mill rate to last year's mill rate, for say, you would be generating X amount of dollars. And I'm just getting Cheryl to grab the tax rates there, so I have that handy. Actually, I think I have it in the bylaw here. There we go.
3.62.
So yeah, municipal mill rate for 20. Oh, this is 2020s.
Oh, did she give me 2020s?
Yeah, I need 2020s. I can just look it up on the website here quickly. Apologize for this, but I think this will help you grasp the understanding when we get to. If we go to, you can get a little, if your ratepayers ever wondering where the tax rates are stored on the website, I can show you this quickly. If we go to government and go to corporate and financial services, property tax, and then if we go to insert here, and there's the insert that is sent with the notice. On page 2 of that insert is the tax rates. It shows the breakdown. And so here you can see the municipal tax rate is 3.5. So if we take that 58 million, I'll just do that calculation here quickly. 58 or 56, let me double check here. Yeah, it's 58 million. So if we take 58,629, 790 times that municipal mill rate of 3 point, should have wrote that down. $3.539 divided by 1,000. That would generate 207,490 municipal tax dollars. I'm talking just municipal. So last year was a bit of an anomaly where we froze the mill rate because there was a minor change in the residential assessment. It dropped like less than 0.5% overall. But this year, we're in a different spectrum of change of assessment. The resident, we're looking at 4.95%. So that's an average change, but I would say a good percentage of the properties experience at a minimum 3% is my gut feeling. So if you freeze the mill rate for municipal speaking, there's going to be, and these are properties that had no physical change, just market value change. So great idea to have a little preamble discussion on that, Brian.
Yeah, it just kind of highlights the importance that last year was significantly different than this year, where there was a lot of unknowns. Our assessment dropped by a good chunk. Previous council chose the option of keeping everything the same, all market rates, nothing increased, so that's good. But just the council should consider, if they were to take that similar approach this year with freezing the mill rates, then all residential owners would see a 3% tax increase based on their assessed value. Just food for thought for council. And then just the general outline of this process for the new council is that under the MGA, we must pass the final operating budget. So we have all of most of the information that we need to pass that. And then after the budget's passed, then we pass the tax rate bylaw. So that's just kind of the process that we'll do, and we'll do that in April.
Just one last comment, maybe, if I may. So on a bigger picture, prior to last year, what typically I think council used to do was they look at the percentage of pie or percentage of taxes that each class of assessment was paying. And so if say your budget increased by 1%, you may want to sprinkle that 1% evenly over each class of assessment. In order to do that, if residential has gone up by 5%, that means you got to drop their mill rate by whatever percent to get to that change in the overall revenue. So if you just kind of have that concept in your mind, that helps you understand that freezing the mill rate doesn't mean there's going to be zero tax change on the property. You need to look at both sides of the equation.
This has been excellent. I learn something new every time we do this, and I find it really interesting. I know there's been some challenges with assessment provincially through that DIP program, and I've heard excellent things about the hybrid model and Dennis's work that the province contracts him to do on their behalf. I think we have some of the best assessors in the province, is what I've heard through other work that I do, and that it directly benefits the county, because when we as council can be confident that our assessments being done accurately, it really does give that confidence to our ratepayers, and it also minimizes the amount of appeals and challenges that we have to taxation, which has its own efficiencies as well. So I want to thank you for sharing this information with us, and you do it in a way that makes it you take a massive amount of information and make it simple enough for us to understand it, and we appreciate that. And we appreciate the work that you do for the county. I know it's not people's favorite thing, but it's one of those necessary evils, so we appreciate that you do it. Any final questions regarding the assessment? Well, thank you. Councillor Larson.
I'll just make one point. I'm not sure if we have anybody listening or not, but if the residential rate increase comes, well, I think we need to remember that doesn't mean that only affects acreage owners. That affects every farm that has a residence on it as well. Just so that people aren't thinking that they're only going after acreage people. That will affect every farmyard as well.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, I will. I think it might be prudent to recess now. I apologize because I know we have some admin here for future agenda items, but...
Move this up.
Are we talking an RFL?
Yes, an RFL, exactly. Which you guys were really patient waiting for. Yes, we should have a motion to accept the presentation as information. I'm just getting back to my agenda.
I'll move that council accept the Assessment 101 presentation as information.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. And we will recess to, is 12:45 good for everybody?
Yep, that should work.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody.
Hi, everyone. I'll